Have you ever written something, a story, a song, a script, and really given it your all, only to revisit it or to show it off to someone and realize, my God, this really is total shit. I don't think I have what it takes. Well, I'm here to tell you, you do have what it takes. The key is to just keep going, even when you're churning out garbage. The problem is the road to success looks like this. Everybody wants to get here, but nobody wants to go through here. The problem is people spend too much time thinking that this is an option. But as a wise man once said, the only way through it is through it. So let's accept the fact that the first step to success is to suck, to be terrible, and just embrace the garbage stage. And I don't even have to say it, you know why. It's because that's where we learn what works and what doesn't work, what the audience will respond to and what they won't. Here's something we all know. Nobody gets it right the first time in any area of life. Not babies learning to walk, not kids riding bikes, not chefs, not engineers, and certainly not writers. Nobody starts at the peak. Even legends start with clumsy, awkward, sometimes embarrassing first attempts. And that's the theme of this video. You gotta start somewhere. Let's start with Dan Harmon, the creator of Community and Rick and Morty. Today, people see him as a genius at building characters and blending absurd comedy with heart. But Harmon himself has admitted that his early work was terrible. Before Community, Harmon was writing plots, sketches, and shorts that went absolutely nowhere. He's talked openly about turning out hundreds of pages of unusable junk. He'd write scenes that dragged on forever, dialogue that was flat, or scripts that tried way too hard to be clever. I want to say that again. Hundreds of pages of unusable junk. I love that. I find it wildly encouraging. He wrote junk, then more junk, then slightly better junk, until he found his rhythm. That willingness to fail on paper over and over again gave him the muscle to eventually create some of the most beloved comedies over the past 2 decades. Then there's George R.R. Martin, the man behind A Song of Ice and Fire. Today, he's one of the most famous fantasy writers alive, but long before Westeros, Martin was a struggling sci-fi writer in the 70s and 80s. He started with short stories and early novels that almost no one remembers today. Why? Because they weren't very good. His early novels, like Dying of the Light, sold poorly, and Martin himself admits that some of them collapsed under their own weight. Too many ideas, not enough discipline. But those failures taught him lessons in structure, pacing, and managing sprawling casts of characters. Lessons that made Game of Thrones possible. Without all those messy early attempts and abandoned projects, Martin couldn't have pulled off a world that complex. Now let's look at Peter Jackson. When you think of him, you probably picture the sweeping majesty of the Lord of the Rings. Epic battles, groundbreaking visuals, emotional depth. But his first real film, it was literally called Bad Taste, and the title was accurate. It was a low-budget splatter comedy about aliens harvesting humans for fast food. The effects were homemade, masks and prosthetics that Jackson created in his mom's oven. And the acting? Mostly his friends goofing around. The tone? Pure camp. By any traditional measure, Bad Taste was a mess. But Jackson poured himself into it anyway. He shot it on weekends, over 4 years, learning cinematography, editing, and special effects by trial and error. That messy little gore film became his film school. And really, if you look at it, it's not bad for what it is, which is an early attempt at directing by someone very young. And really, a lot of times when we declare something to be garbage, it's because we're comparing it to things completely in different leagues. If you compare Bad Taste to Lord of the Rings, of course it's not going to look as good. But if you look closely enough, you'll almost always see the seeds of potential. The movie actually gained a cult following, which helped him raise money for his next projects. And little by little, his craft sharpened until he was ready to take on Lord of the Rings. So, do you notice a pattern here? Dan Harmon wrote garbage drafts until he found structure. George R.R. Martin churned out clumsy novels before mastering sprawling storytelling. Peter Jackson made a goofy splatter flick before before tackling Middle-earth. The greatness came later. The garbage came first. Most people want to skip that stage. They want to start brilliant, polished, and ready, but you can't. Nobody can. Think about it like this. When a baby takes its first steps and falls, we don't say, well, I guess walking isn't for them. No, we cheer them on. We know that falling is a part of the process. The truth is, early work isn't something just to get through. It's part of the job. Those awkward drafts where you figure out structure, pacing, and voice, they're exposing problems you can't see in your head because they are not obvious until they are on the page. For example, maybe a character feels charismatic in your imagination, but once you start writing their dialogue, you realize they aren't. Or maybe a scene you thought was powerful reads more like filler when you write it down. The discovery doesn't happen until you write it out. Clumsy writing helps you build instincts. You start to recognize when a scene drags, when a joke doesn't land, or when a chapter feels lopsided. That awareness doesn't come from thinking about writing, it comes from producing pages, even bad ones. Every draft is a map. It shows you where you went off course, and the next draft is the correction. That's not just how novel scripts and films get made, that's how authors, directors, screenwriters are made. Nobody nails it in a single pass. Remember, it's not failure, it's data. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.